enthusiasm, we have to do well tomorrow.
Yeah!
Will you all be out voting tomorrow? It's a lot of fun, but we still have to go to the bottom line. The bottom line is not only voting, but becoming a delegate. That's important. We expect to do very, very well. I don't make bold predictions, but there's no reason in the world why we cannot win this state. So I suspect that we are going to do exceptionally well, and I thank you so much for all your hard effort. But it really isn't me that galvanizes and energizes you. There is a need in this country. There's a great need, and there's not a too difficult answer. We have too much government. Big government undermines liberty. What we need is less government and more liberty, and we will solve our problems. The founders of this country had a beef with the king, so they had a little revolution, and they wrote a little document called the Constitution. They did their very best to provide for us a republic, and they were hopeful that it would last, but they were very, very leery about whether or not we would live up to the task. And unfortunately, in the last 100 years, I think we have slipped a whole lot. That doesn't mean we've lost it. But if we continue to do what we're doing right now, we will lose it, and it will be very, very difficult to recover. But right now, the people are being energized. Washington, I can guarantee you, they are sound asleep, and there are some other candidates that are sound asleep. They don't know you exist. They don't know what you want. So we have to send a loud and clear message to the rest of the people of this country, and especially to Washington, D.C., that we want to live within the confines of the Constitution, live up to our oath of office, shrink the size of the government, and expand the people's liberty once again in this country. One of the best measurements of the size of government is how much money they spend. And then the next best measurement, not even a better way, is how they spend money they don't have. And then they go out and borrow. Then that other little trick, how much money they spend that they don't have and they can't borrow, and then they print it. And that leads to more and more problems, expansion of government, undermining the economy, destroying the value of the currency, and then getting involved in very, very dangerous actions, like an entitlement system that doesn't work, and pursuing a foreign policy of policing the world that is a total failure, gets us into trouble, undermines our national defense, and helps to bankrupt our country. And we ought to change it. There's so much I see of our problems today that would have been prevented if we had only people in Washington who took their oath of office seriously, understood and read the Constitution, and if we had done that, I believe we would not have the problems today. We would not be overspending. You know, if we followed the Constitution, we wouldn't have a central bank. We wouldn't have a Federal Reserve System. The founders knew something about monetary policy. Matter of fact, the monetary issue has been around a long time. It's a biblical issue, honest weights and measures. You shouldn't cheat people. Debasing the currency. That's been known for a long time. But even the founders knew about it because they had runaway inflation with the continental dollar. So that is the reason they said, only gold and silver can be legal tender. You can't emit bills of credit, which is printing press money, and there is no authority to have a central bank. Just think of all the mischief that would have been avoided if we had just obeyed that part of the Constitution. We wouldn't have had the government size this big because, you know, Jefferson argued the case but lost the argument about the federal government should be able to borrow money. He wanted to spend the money and tax the people, and then they would know exactly how much government is costing. Borrowing money is deceitful because it delays the payment. Of course, you pay the interest and you can borrow for a long time. But then they went the next step 100 years ago and say, well, borrowing is getting tough, interest rates keep going up, so what we want to do is institutionalize this principle of printing money through the Federal Reserve System. So this provides the opportunity for those who like big government. And guess what? They're not all liberals. There are some conservatives, at least they call themselves conservatives. I don't think we should grant them the title of conservative, but they can understand money. Unfortunately, the spending habits were bipartisan. They keep saying that one of our problems in Washington, we don't have enough bipartisanship. For spending, we've had way too much bipartisanship because both sides have been spending way too much money. Now, if you have groups coming together, I like to think of more coalitions, and they can have different opinions, but we should come together for cutting spending and realizing deficits are bad and printing press money is bad, and therefore we have to come together on how we're going to cut. Then have agreements, cut in both areas, whether it's the entitlement system or whether it's the foreign entitlement system associated with our excessive military spending around the world. Now, if we do that, we can literally come up with a solution, because it should be the easiest place. The easiest place to cut should be the overseas spending. And yet,
amen.
Unfortunately, the provision in the Constitution that was provided for us, and this is an explicit authorization or a mandate from the founders, because they resented the fact that the king could initiate wars and then tax the colonists. They would also use the military to invade their houses, and this is why we have a Fourth Amendment for governments not coming into our houses. But they said the king, the executive branch, should never be able to go to war in a free society, in a republic. The people should make the decision through their representatives in Washington, and no war should be fought unless it's declared by the Congress, not the president. But to add insult to injury, since World War II, we have gone to war, and just recently we've gotten engaged in more war activity overseas. It isn't just ignoring the Congress. What they have done is they have insulted us. Our president just recently decided they wanted to go into Libya and Egypt. He says, well, I get my authority from NATO and the United Nations. And this is very dangerous. We want sovereignty. Actually, the true sovereignty is with the individual or very local government. And if you have a federal government, it should be kept very, very small. But we're moving in the wrong direction. This is the reason since the early 1980s I've always introduced resolution to get out of the United Nations.
Yeah!
Today, we're in the midst of a financial crisis because we don't obey the monetary issue. And one thing that they're doing now, the world knows that we're in this mess. It's just not a few of us that realize that the system that we have is coming unglued, the debt bubble is getting worse, and they've not gotten us out of this mess yet. But guess what? They agree we need a new currency. But the discussions are going on at this very moment to have a new world currency based under the IMF and the United Nations. That will lead to less sovereignty, more, one world government, a trend that we have to reverse. We have to defend our Constitution, defend our right to be a sovereign nation, defend our right to deliver most of our government to local people, and most of the personal responsibility of our own personal lives to the individuals and to the families. last 10 years, we have been fighting constantly. Nobody knows probably the exact number, or at least we can't figure it out, exactly how many countries we're in and how many bases we have. It's approximately 900 bases in about 135 countries. But we